Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Today's guest is the one and only Jeff Booth, a general partner at Ego Death Capital and author of The Price of Tomorrow. This was one of my favorite conversations, and I did my best to try and challenge some of Jeff's ideas. And I think you'll find that in most instances, I was wholly unsuccessful. And I ended up leaving the conversation learning a lot and realizing just how much more I had to learn. The Bitcoin rabbit hole is truly a journey that never ends. And just when you think you've got a decent understanding of how things work and how they all fit together, you realize that there are levels to the space. It was a pleasure talking with him, and I think you'll find our conversation pretty fascinating. Either way, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And once again, thanks so much to all of you who are boosting sats via their Fountain app. Thanks so much, and please keep them coming. That's enough from me. Now over to my conversation with Jeff.
Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay. What's the second best? There is no second best. There is no second best crypto asset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Why Bitcoin Show. I'm your host, Dale Warburton. It's a weekly podcast on why Bitcoin matters and what makes it completely different to all other cryptocurrencies. If you're interested in Bitcoin and you'd like to distill crypto fact from fiction, you've come to the right place.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. Mr. Jeff Booth, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dale.
Jeff, you're one of those guys within the Bitcoin space who's obviously, I guess, one of the most respected. But I think what I admire most about you is your temperament. So I wanted to just start there because when I think of you, I think about this clip that I saw, whether it was on Twitter or elsewhere on the internet, where you were, I think, on a crypto podcast and you effectively told these fellas that their favorite tokens were going to zero, but you did it in such a good way. And I wanted to understand where your temperament comes from. Is this something innate, or is this something over time that you've worked on as being something that is actually quite effective when trying to communicate?
That's a big question. I would say growing up, I had all the tools to develop this because I just was raised in a really loving family. I didn't have growing up a lot of trauma or anything. And then understanding kind of how each person has gifts, each person sees things in different ways, understanding how I couldn't see the things in me, yet it was really easy to see the problems in other people, made me realize, we all have this narrow view of the world, and I do too. And so the simple answer is it was developed over time. And I try not to change somebody else. If they have a view of the world and they're happy in their view of the world, then great. Then I have a view of the world, and if I'm happy in that and it just makes me feel better in the world that I live in, then great. So I guess it lets everybody have their time and space. You can see the good in people without getting so mad.
Yeah.
And for me, it allows better conversations, but it's probably a trait developed over time.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I suppose, when you first get into Bitcoin, there's a very sort of evangelical flavor to all your discussions. And then you have a very low tolerance to people that perhaps are dabbling in these other cryptocurrencies. And then they have fun staying poor stuff comes out, the so-called toxicity. And I've often questioned to what extent those types of attitudes are actually effective. If you think of what's the objective, you want to bring more people under the Bitcoin tent. My view is that it probably pays to be somewhat more empathetic. Is that something that you would share when you're talking to folks that are, I guess, saying, yeah, Bitcoin's a thing, but hey, there's all these other cryptocurrencies and they might have different quote unquote utility?
It's such a nuanced conversation. Some of those people saying have fun saying poor, if that works for them and maybe that's convinced just few people to be able to come over in their mind, and it'll resonate. It'll feel like love because you'll be around a whole bunch of people that'll be like that. If it feels right to you and you want to stay there, then great. And I don't think it does me any harm at all for somebody to be there. In fact, some of the most outrageous people in this space have also taught me lessons in this space. Again, I have nothing but love for those people too, and they can do whatever they want. I just choose, for me, this is who I am, and I can't change me. So I'm not prescribing what somebody else should do. I find best connection, when I see through what you just said, empathy, this is a really hard space to understand when you're measuring it from another space. And each person on their journey down the rabbit hole kind of is at a different level of going down that rabbit hole. And just because you're a 6 out of 10 and a year ago you were a 4 out of 10, right? You change. You change through that journey. Actually, I think the most profound thing about this whole space is, as more and more people journey down this rabbit hole, the emergent aspect of who we are on top of a base layer of honesty changes us. If you try to cheat this protocol, you get flushed out. And we've grown up, all of our history books, everything that we've ever lived in is from a different paradigm. So it would be really easy to think that that was the paradigm that the world is moving into, because it always has looked like that. The paradigm we're moving into with Bitcoin, as long as it stays decentralized and secure, is unlike the world's ever seen. So that would be confusing for people that think it's a coin or Ponzi scheme, or measuring it from their piece of paper that they think it's debasing, so they think it's going up in price. So it'd be really confusing for all of these reasons. So I just don't assign malice to it. I don't assign anything to it. It just is. And as you get deeper into it, you just let people be who they are.
Totally. You do you. And I love what you said there, is that like the more you go down this Bitcoin rabbit hole, the more it sort of uncovers aspects of kind of who you are. And I certainly feel like I've changed tremendously over the last 4 years, and had an outlook that was pretty narrow and, I guess, resentful towards centralized authorities and what they were doing to us 4 years ago, to the world that I envision today, where it's arguably gotten worse in many respects, but I've got a lot of things I'm so excited about in the future. This is another big question, and I'd love you to try and unpack this one. It's the idea that people often will say these things in Bitcoin, and I'm not sure they either have sufficient understanding or the sufficient nuance within what they're saying. One of those is fix the money, fix the world. And it's a nice thing to put on your car or your laptop as a sticker, but I'm not sure that I even have got that grasp all the way down. And my view is that there's also a degree to which the political system that we exist in today optimizes for short-term incentives, the 4-year electoral cycle. And so we need to overlay and import that into our assessment of just the fact that the money is broken, which I fundamentally agree. Do you think that there's some merit in that sort of argument, or how do you think about this fix the money, fix the world mantra?
I actually think it's completely true. I just don't think people understand the depth of what it means. Right? All money is information. It's just a ledger describing not what you don't want more pieces of paper. You want what more money buys you. And so your description of what money buys you is unique to you, and that timing. And so if money is just information and we have broken money, then we have broken information. And there is no possible way to fix the world through broken information. In fact, you could say that we're the supercomputer. Our individual thoughts and actions, we are the supercomputer. We spread information. We have different shots on net. Everybody's trying in a free market to create more value. You cannot, if you're in a free market, the output of your work is creating more value for somebody else. So yes, you can create more wealth for yourself, but the output of your more wealth is more wealth for all of society. That is what the free market looks like. And we live nothing like a free market because money is broken. So if you just said, what would the emergent nature of your behavior look like on top of broken money? It would be really hard to see that we're all connected through it, because it's meant to divide us. And so the depth of what I'm saying right now is so much deeper than I would say many even that say fix money, fix the world understand. But it is the thing that binds us. We are one. This conversation I'm having with you may change your mind, might not today, might 2 years from now, that something you picked up on that then you go on and create value for somebody else. It touches other people, and you can never know all those people that touched your life, and because you can't even comprehend all the discussions. But it shows It shows what we do, and all of it's in service for all of us, unless you have broken money. Then if you have broken money, it's not in service of all of us. It's in service of few of us to divide the rest of us.
Okay. And just to sort of unpack a little bit further, if we lived in a world where the money was sound, where there was nobody who had an inherent advantage in terms of access to it, or there was no Cantillon effect and stuff like that, do you think that things like inequality, which is one of the key drivers of a unhappy society, do you think that would inherently be reduced as a result? Is that one of the key drivers?
Absolutely, because the free market is deflationary. Because the free market, you cannot create more value without somebody else winning, right? Because they choose your thing that you create, and they're comparing it against everything else. That's how competitive the free market is. You have to create more value. And that's in service of all of us. If you simplify all economics to these two tenets, prices fall to the marginal cost of production, and we trade with each other all over the world to get more value. It means we're all connected. Inequality, as you're referencing inequality, doesn't exist in that. There's still inequality because if you provide more value to somebody, you get more of the pie. Inequality in that sense is perfect. Inequality in the sense of I don't create more value. I sit on top of everybody telling where the money should be distributed to extract more from people. That's the inequality you're talking about. So imagine a world where you have AI and robotics merging, tools that we created to create more value for us. That the output of that is every industry, every single thing that you can think of today, because all of these things are created by people today, and robots are actually doing the work. So all prices keep falling forever. What does that world look like? Right? The true value of your Bitcoin in that world explodes so high because the real cost of everything falls forever. And then you would never need all your Bitcoin in that world. So what would you do with that time, and what would you do with helping others? It keeps on distributing forever. That's the paradigm. Why this is so hard to see is because most people are measuring. They're trying to attach their call it mental scaffolding from how your brain works, from all of the books you've read, all of the previous biases onto Bitcoin. And why it's so hard to understand too is you don't have the mental scaffolding to understand Bitcoin because it's never existed before. So the as you're developing it, and that's why when kind of the rabbit hole, you kind of keep on learning and you keep on learning and you're going down, oh my God, what about that? It touches this too. It touches this too. It's tied to energy. It touches everything. And as you keep going down that, you're developing the mental scaffolding and the pattern recognition in your head to understand what this looks like, right? Because all your brain is a biological, it's just a biological supercomputer, and it repeats patterns. It forgets things, so it prunes information to be energy efficient, to remember things that are important. So, and it creates memories through high emotion, and some of those memories and reading, practicing, and all of those memories keep you stuck a lot of times in that pattern that keeps on repeating. And you think it's totally true for you. And just instead of, it's so hard to see in yourself, but you can see in someone else so easily. Why are they doing that? And to what end? And they keep on doing it over and they repeat the same thing. So you have to ask yourself, if everyone else is doing that, then you must be too. So now attach Bitcoin, which is totally different. You almost have to program your brain, new mental scaffolding, because there's never been a paradigm like this to attach new ideas to that look unlike anything we've ever seen. So that's what's also fascinating about the space, which is really also powerful as the world changes from ideas. Because every construct you look around was all created by us. Mm-hmm. It's all, in other words, it all was created by ideas, which are which were our concepts. Every system we've ever lived in, every piece of technology we've ever built is all created by our ideas. And our ideas are getting, not all of them, better and better, but to create more efficiency for us. And the output of that efficiency should mean prices fall for everyone and we live in abundance. And when I say should be, that's what Bitcoin's measuring. If you want to measure through pieces of paper that are being debased, you'll think Bitcoin's going up in price. But it's just the piece of paper being debased. It's just more currency units versus what's really happening.
It seems to me, Jeff, that I need to reread your book because there's aspects of what you're saying that I'm like, okay, I've got to go and dig a bit deeper. I think part of me just asking these questions is I have this sort of fierce desire to avoid groupthink. And so I like to really make sure that my ideas are intellectually robust and sound and defensible. And it's very easy just to jump onto some sort of mantra or slogan. But I think, my commitment to this space is to do my best in terms of understanding, going layers down. And I don't think I'm quite there yet. It feels as if that's why I love this space so much, is because you think you know what you're doing at some stage, and then you kind of start realizing, hold on, there's all these other things I need to touch on. You mentioned AI and robotics, and I hadn't planned on chatting about that, but it's a fascinating space, something that came across my radar last year, and how I could sort of interact with Bitcoin. Have you got any thoughts around kind of what the future looks like and the role that Bitcoin will play as more and more things become automated through robotics and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so that's actually what I'm trying to describe. So why that's hard to see is because, I hear this all the time. People have seen my work for 3 or 4 years and still haven't grabbed hold of actually what it means. You just asked me the question that we just already talked about. Because what AI and robotics or any technology or anything in energy, any technology, anything in health, all of these things mean prices fall forever, exponentially fall forever. And if you're measuring in Bitcoin, what that means is forget the existing monetary system. If you're measuring in Bitcoin, what it means is every year you can expect prices to fall for you, measured in Bitcoin. Because today the natural rate of deflation in the market is probably something like 5%. Next year it'll be faster as technology does more of the work. The year after it'll be faster. So if you did nothing, if you didn't work, you'd get richer every year. And forever, you just keep getting richer, even if you did nothing. Because why don't you pay for the oxygen you're breathing right now? That's what all of these other things will look like. And so keep the opposite side. So if that is the free market, then anything that stops that is not, whatever people want to talk about it, their capitalism, crony capitalism, Marxism, like all of these constructs live on a different ledger that were always a control system. They were just a control system that people didn't see the net, because if you could steal a little bit of the productivity that should flow to all humans, a tiny bit at a time, you could accrete massive wealth and power. So there would be, throughout history, there would obviously be every sort of way to be able to do that, to cheat the system, because you could create so much wealth and power. Bitcoin breaks that cycle forever. So the output of all of these things that today we're talking AI and robotics. Tomorrow we'll be talking about that implication within healthcare, or that implication within farming, or that implication within energy, and all of these different pieces. And what that means is they're all exponentially deflationary. And only a monetary system in fixed units could allow that to flow to all society in the form of lower prices.
Yeah.
So why that integrates with Bitcoin perfectly is that's what it's measuring. It's measuring. It's the only free market.
And these machines, Jeff, when you're thinking about like the AI assistants that you've been training diligently in the background, and eventually we'll all have similar types of assistants and various kind of AI tools to be able to do things on our behalf. Will they be wanting to accept Bitcoin as payment instead of the clunky fiat rails that we currently have, and all the different layers of settlement and all that jazz?
So yes, but you're thinking as if the AI is smarter than us, and in almost a dystopian way. I'm actually thinking in all the AI is a sum total of all of our information, all of our knowledge that is getting better and better at serving us. So we'll automate the AI to be able to use it. We are the supercomputer. It's not the AI is a supercomputer. We are. It's our ideas. It's what we're doing right now that then give rise to something that was not there before, that think I can solve this problem, create wealth in doing so for other people. If I'm right, then people use my product or service because they're winning, and they win and I win. And this was in my Madeira talk, right? Today we have an extractive economy where you could say 500 million people prey on 7.5 billion people. And through Bitcoin, you're going to connect 8 billion of us into the supercomputer. That extractive economy that you live in that does that is way more productive today at 500 million people than it was in call it church and state, where you had tens of thousands of people extracting from the entire population. Right? Because adding more brains, adding more of us, our ideas to that global collective creates more opportunities. And a lot of what we take for granted today was created by people you couldn't even name. Mm-hmm. And it's free and ubiquitous to you. And those people wouldn't have been found unless the printing press was created, because they wouldn't have never read those books to be able to see the other ideas. And so because you can't name them doesn't mean they didn't create a whole bunch of wealth for you. They did. You're living on top of it. You can't even see it, right? It is the base layer of our ideas. And now instead of 500 million people, it's going to be 8 billion people. And there's nothing the very small minority of people that are trying to stop this can do about an open market of 8 billion people moving to this. It's going to take time, but it is super, super powerful.
Agreed. All right. And I'll move away from some of the deep philosophical stuff because my brain's exploding, Jeff. I'm going to read your book again. So I was keen to get a sense of what you were looking at as a partner within Ego Death Capital. Like, what are some of the most exciting things that you're seeing being built today?
Yeah, I don't want to get into specifics of companies, and you could also say there's potential threat vectors of the existing system trying to stop what we're talking about. But I'll say it in this way: a system like Bitcoin that's decentralized and secure, if you couldn't stop Bitcoin on the base layer, then you'd have to try to stop it on the second layer. You'd have to make it look like gold. So you'd have to abstract away kind of a second layer, kind of use this coin rather than this coin. You'd have to make self-custodial. You'd have to try to ban that. You'd have to say Lightning that wouldn't work. You'd have to say all of these narratives that you hear today. And what I would say is, I'm just surprised people are surprised, because we've known this for a long time. We knew all of these attack vectors would come. And today you have people scared of these attack vectors and very confused by these attack vectors, which are just completely natural. There's an absolute incompatibility with the world we live in today and measure that's based on theft with Bitcoin. That incompatibility, because in Bitcoin, prices fall forever. Everyone on the planet gets richer instead of a chosen few at the expense of everyone else. That incompatibility and how much power there is in the system and how much energy people give to the system because they don't see what we're saying means that that system is massively strengthened by your actions trying to stop it. And so at a high level, we always knew this would happen. And when I see all of the incredible things in our portfolio and the entrepreneurs that we get to work with, they're having success, like tremendous success, because they're building the rails of what the world's going to look like. So there's not one specific that I'm excited about. I'm really excited about literally everyone, and can't believe I get to play this role with these amazing entrepreneurs that are building this. Some will fail. Some things that people are talking about, and it's just a free market. The free market of ideas, creating more value for others. What they're doing at the level that they're doing this, and the knowledge of what we're talking about, it's crazy powerful. It's crazy powerful, which will bring way more people into the space.
And you mentioned all the sort of things on the go relating to the attack on privacy and the like. We've seen what's happened with Samurai lately, the attack on unhosted wallets and all that sort of thing. You're saying this is somewhat inevitable, and you saw this coming a mile away, yet people are seemingly surprised. Do you think that we're in the sort of, and then they fight you type stage?
We've been in that phase for a long time. That phase started on layer one, but upon a realization that layer one can't be stopped, that fight is moving to layer two. That fight's going to go on for a long, long, long time. This is hard for people who don't understand Bitcoin to hear. But if a system is based on theft, and you make it stronger with all of your actions in that system, then what are you saying about the world you live in? And how could you complain about what you see in the world anywhere if that's the base layer? Once you see that, you can't unsee it. And so I'm building an alternative path that I'm perfectly happy every day in building. And the defense isn't on me to talk about an honest layer. The defense is on the attacker to say why that's bad.
It seems though, Jeff, with that, I mean, what you're sort of saying is that this is necessarily a systemic issue, independent of who the people are in charge.
Yep.
But is there not a case to be made that there are certain actors who would necessarily be better or worse? I'll take sort of your home country as an example. Would you rather have the conservative leader, Pierre, I can't pronounce his surname, apologies.
Polyev,
or Mr. Trudeau? I'd probably be inclined to think that Pierre is more of a free market individual. Yes, it's still based on a base layer of theft and inflation in that sense, but I'm inclined to believe he'd be more willing to sort of allow the free market to dictate things rather than
he cannot without Bitcoin. It's mathematically impossible. And that's why the simple answer to your question is I'm a fan of Pierre because I believe he's going to drive Bitcoin and make Bitcoin legal so more people can understand it. If he wasn't, I wouldn't care one iota, because it's just all you're saying on top of a layer of theft is who gets more of the stolen money that comes from you. So otherwise, if somebody's not in Bitcoin promoting if they're talking out one side of saying they believe in free markets, and a free market can't exist because a free market is deflationary, and it would reset the financial system completely, unequivocally. Like every bank would fail, everything would fail in it. Let's just put it, if you had a house worth $1 million, you just took a $900,000 mortgage on $1 million house because you thought it was protecting your value. And then somebody came out and said, it's going to be a free market. And the market started collapsing and your house was worth $25,000 and you couldn't pay your debt. Would you vote for more manipulation and money before the bank failed and all your money in the bank was taken? Of course you would. So it's human nature to pretend to be completely hypocritical about believing a free market when it's convenient, but voting for self-interest when it's not. Completely hypocritical. So the simple answer to this is, I don't care. I honestly, I care. So Trudeau had my books. His whole team had my books, and I knew him. before he was elected the first time. He chose to ignore all of it, tuned it out. Polyev grabbed that opportunity, read more, understood, and I think he understands what we're dealing with down to the sand. At the end of the day, we'll see how he acts. Proof of work.
For work, exactly. And then when you think in the future there, Jeff, like long term, what in your mind would constitute a failure of Bitcoin? Because people would often say, it's just incapable of failing, it's an inevitability, etc. And then there's got to be some sort of tail risk, something in your mind that could
Yeah. So I'm constantly open to tail risk. In fact, and probably very vigilant, and more than most people realize. Do you run a node yourself?
I'm actually coming out now. I do not run a node.
You should run a node, because then you're protecting the network. Your vote counts. Otherwise, you're not. You're choosing to trust people like me who run nodes and other people who to protect the network for you. You have a voice. Every single person has a voice. And why it's so hard to change is once you have this insight of decentralized and security, how important that is for humanity, you become a node. You protect it. And as you understand why that's critical, you also see, okay, where are the other attack vectors? And you go and mitigate those attack vectors too. In fact, part of the reason we created the VC fund was to mitigate the attack vectors, to be able to exploit and create value for other people. And so you become an active participant in defending the network. And so it's not up to everybody else, it's up to us. You asked what would make me change. If it lost decentralization or security, then it failed. I don't believe that's possible because human action, understanding the importance of decentralization, security, taking action to prevent the centralization of it. That's why I don't think it's possible. If you think about, and remember, I see a lot of things building that other people don't see. I don't spend my time in all the nonsense of kind of this is going to fail, this is going to fail. I would say, if I was really worried about a failure, you'll hear me.
Okay, so when you think of the decentralization piece in particular, you're referring to the nodes, and that's really the key. As long as people are able to run their own node, that is what fundamentally keeps this protocol decentralized. And then I guess
because
hash powers the security.
Yeah, exactly. So the miners are economic actors chasing abundant energy, and by chasing abundant energy, securing the network with energy. So they're constantly looking for lower cost energy. And that's why when you look at this, instead of thinking about it as a coin, you have to think about it as a permissionless, open, decentralized, and secure protocol bounded by energy, creating energy abundance by its nature. Because that's what the miners are doing. They're chasing energy in Africa. They're chasing energy on landfill sites. They're chasing and flare gas. They're taking that energy that produces heat, and they're integrating the heat into businesses to be able to be more effective on energy. Because there is no life without energy. In physics, that we are energy, right? It tethers a first principle to energy. It tethers a new peer-to-peer internet to energy. And there's nothing you can do about it, because nothing you can do to change that because of these economic incentives. And then the nodes holding every transaction in chat. We audit it. My node verifies it, that it played by the rules that I agreed to. And so all the people running nodes are constantly verifying that. So if a miner decides to try to cheat you, their block doesn't get confirmed, and they lose all of the value of their mining equipment and everything else. So if they try to change the rules, if a bunch of people try to change the rules, and the nodes say sorry, then all the people that tried to change the rules just got liquidated. And that's what happened in the block size wars. And you can see exactly what I'm talking about if you look at the split at Bitcoin at that time. And I suspect that might happen again at some point, but I don't think that maybe here's a different way to say it. Just for me, I'm unbuyable. You couldn't buy me. There is no money that could buy me. When I see the people that I respect most in Bitcoin, they're all like that. They are the soldiers protecting this. Some people might say they're aggressive, but that's why I say each person in this, even though I might not agree with them specifically, all of these people have taught me things.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I actually really like that framework, Jeff, of just saying essentially, like, as long as it remains decentralized and secure, I'm not worried. And you can sort of talk about all the specifics, but that's fundamentally what keeps this protocol ticking. When you think about the way that you look at Bitcoin, what would you say is your most controversial view? I'm always interested to hear folks' take on that.
I actually don't know if I do have a controversial view. Like I really don't. I have a controversial view of the existing system,
Yes.
and how most people spend so much time in it, thinking that their life will be better inside a system that's stealing from them. But I don't even know if that's controversial as people start to realize it. So I don't know. I don't know. You'd have to tell me what's my controversial view.
No, I mean, look, Jeff, I don't think there's anything that you said it's particularly controversial than Bitcoin. If anything, I think it's just a lot of it's not well understood. And I think it's evident from today's discussion, there's aspects of the way that you speak about Bitcoin that I still need to go a little bit deeper on. But I think the most controversial view is in relation to the existing system, because that's 99% of people. And even the notion that inflation is theft is something that it's not something people have contemplated. And it's like, well, what are you talking about? So no, I think that's absolutely fair, Jeff. I'd love to shift over, and I've tried something a little bit new for today. I reached out to my audience on Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter forever and a day, and asked and said, listen,
change to Noster. Change to Noster.
There we go. I'll also be moving more to that. But I think for the purpose of today, Jeff, I'm going to take a baby step, and it's an easy win. I'm going to do it and run a node. I think it's actually, I've had pitiful excuses in the past. I think NAS will be my second challenge, but from today's discussion, but running a node, I think, is a non-negotiable, and it's something I've kind of put off. It sort of fell into the too hard bucket, but I even know that there are people selling solutions literally out the box with Bitcoin core loaded, boom, literally plug and play. It's kind of idiot proof, and there's no excuse. So that'll be the one takeaway for me from today.
Think about what you're doing and what we're doing as this podcast, because you probably just through doing that will also invite a whole bunch of other people to see their own actions on how they protect this, right? And your willingness to kind of say, you're right. I can talk all I want. I'm almost a hypocrite, and I say that because I was too, right, about this system, that you give more energy to the other system. It almost doesn't matter what you do in this. If you're saying, I spend 1% of my time in Bitcoin, it's better than 0% of your time. And your world starts to get better. And then 2%, and then 3%. And as you start to do more and more, you start to see yourself differently, and you see all sorts of different opportunities as you spend more time. Now, but if you tried to convince somebody that's spending 0 time that their life is going to completely change and get better if they spend 70, 80, 90, 100% of their time, they wouldn't believe it. So you start, and then however much time somebody wants to do it, they'll start taking the path and go deeper and deeper and deeper, and through that path, literally your life changes.
The more I learn, the more exciting things become. And I just feel super grateful to have found something that I'm so deeply passionate about, because it's not just number go up, it's freedom go up. It's about, this resonates with my soul. I talk about it as like I'm a lone wolf. I'm not somebody who's followed the sheep, and kind of, I've always wanted to, go my own way. And there's just something about Bitcoin to me that it just resonates with me just on such a deep level that for people on the outside, they kind of look and go, this man just likes orange coin go up.
Somebody said to me recently that when I first heard you talk 4 years ago, I knew nothing about economics or anything you were talking about, but it felt like there was truth there. And then, so I had to stay with it. And as I stayed with it, everything in my life changed for the better. So, yeah, but that's how the world works, right? That's exactly how the world works. And we are responsible. Each of us are responsible in doing it. And we can't blame other people if we're not taking responsibility.
That's also part of Bitcoin, radical personal responsibility. So I had a bunch of questions from my audience on that terribly centralized platform that Elon runs. And one of them was from Sir William of Rotherham. He had asked, if you were an 18-year-old in today's world and you're interested in technology, what is the career path you would be recommending people perhaps explore? How would you go about doing this?
So I do believe that Bitcoin holds some of the most promise going forward because of what we're talking about. It's a protocol, and very few people understand the protocol. And that means it's the dawn of the new internet. And it's all going to be built on top of Bitcoin. So understanding that, I think, is a prerequisite. And for my kids, they know Bitcoin. They're learning this path. They're interested. Beyond that, it's easier to do well in a tide that's rising. So what tides are rising? Robotics is an area that we'll see a whole bunch of innovation and a whole bunch of companies formation and a whole bunch of hiring in the next 10 years. So engineering specifically, or anything in robotics or the kind of those industries would look good. I think AI and health is going to, there's regulatory challenges and everything there, but I think that's another area that's just going to completely break down our existing control structure that gives us bad health outcomes. So I would look at those high cost areas that are going to change through technology. And if it wasn't Bitcoin, it was where is the application of something else and Bitcoin to be able to create value. Superseding that, I would just say curiosity and accountability. Those two things together. Take responsibility, accountability for every single thing you do. And meaning when you fail, you learn faster.
Great advice there, Jeff. I had also another chap on Elon's platform, free online user. He asked, what were your thoughts on Michael Saylor's decentralized ID solution that's just been released?
Yeah, so it's a free market and people are going to try all sorts of things. And Michael's going to try things. Michael's been really great for Bitcoin, but I don't know if this is the thing that I love, but the free market's going to decide this. If I double click on this, and then I think this is where the confusion is, there's a belief widely in the Bitcoin ecosystem that the giant companies need to buy Bitcoin to be able to make Bitcoin work. And that's not true. It's working now. It's repricing everything right now. So you don't need giant organizations. What's good for the giant organization or government is more and more control, right? And more DID or everything else. And that might still be needed, but is that going to be captured by a company that does digital identity? And then if you wanted to get on a plane and go to China, would China use MicroStrategy? And probably the most important thing is, I don't understand how the free market could actually drive an oracle onto Bitcoin base layer. Anything that requires an oracle, like a government DID, shouldn't live on the base layer because the base layer doesn't need it. I know this is based on inscriptions, but it utilizes this, and so there's a cost to the base layer. And I just don't know. I just don't know if, number one, that's going to be a hard path to try to create that. And I don't think governments are going to say, okay, MicroStrategy, you're the DID system for the globe. I suspect it's going to be a bottom-up change that is going to look radically different. But if that's a path that free market he wants to decide to put money after and try and do, then he's welcome to do it.
I think something that Bitcoiners share in common really is the fact that they believe in the free market. Obviously, we don't live in one today, but the idea is the market will tell us what's actually valuable or not in the broader scheme of time. So absolutely, it ultimately doesn't matter so much what you and I think about it. Time will tell.
Like, again, there's going to be a lot of people utilizing this for things you don't agree with. And if the free market says that this is what we agree with, and that is the best that anybody can come up with, then that's the way it'll look. So if you go back to the dawn of the internet in the early days, there was a lot of stuff that failed in 99, 2000, like tons of stuff that failed. And a lot of talk about what it would look like, and then it emerged different on the other side of that. There's going to be a ton of stuff here that fails, and people are going to get all uppity about. And I consider them all shots on net, or of trying to create more value.
Yeah. Do you have that same view when it comes to things like ordinals and inscriptions? I mean, just the idea is that the free market will determine if any of the stuff is actually valuable. So go ahead, do what you want.
I don't think the free market will decide that the cost of that on the base layer or through inscriptions warrants it, because it's cheaper to have on a different layer. If you're going to have an oracle, put it in Fedi. To put it somewhere else. Put it somewhere where there is no cost. Now, because you're determining, like through an oracle, and say, if somebody can change. And you'd probably need that, right, in identity, because the government's going to want it. And what if they made a mistake? You're going to have an oracle, in that type of identity scheme. And so that oracle, I just think the cost of that oracle, whether it's inscriptions or in the base layer itself, it's just going to be way too high a cost, and it'll fail because of that.
Interesting. All right, thanks for that. From the late night show, what do you think is going to be driving Bitcoin forward in the next 3 to 5 years?
Probably state attacks, right? The existing system getting more unstable will drive a whole bunch of people to understand this. Different things being built to be able to create broader adoption and easier adoption. And yeah, I think it's going to play out for a long time. My paradigm, or my way to say this, is, what does it look like in other parts of the world where money is failing? And do people still believe in their piece of paper? Or do they believe a savior in the political system can save them? And of course they do. And so why wouldn't it look any different here? That's what it looks like. And yes, you are immune from it because you're in Bitcoin and now you're going to run a node. So you're living in a different world. You're living in a world that's describing the free market, and it's growing, but it's still really small compared to how many people are giving their energy to the one that's failing. What drives the timing? What drives the change? It's driven by us. It's driven by our understanding of how much power we have in creating the world we want and how much energy we give to either system. I just suspect we're very, very, very early in kind of how powerful that message is, how much control you actually have that you give up because you think somebody else controls you. Most people do, but until a greater audience, which is getting bigger and bigger, it's growing very fast. And there's a tipping point that it keeps growing faster. But I think we're just really early.
Yeah, that is true. And what's interesting, what you were saying there, Jeff, is how we've got all these different countries around the world, however many there are, like 180 odd, and they're all at different stages in terms of their economic progress. But almost all of them still have a lot of people who still believe in the pieces of paper. And it's just a case of like, which is less bad.
Yeah.
You know, Turkey's really bad. South Africa's much, much better than Turkey. Australia is much better than South Africa. And the US is better than Australia. So, when I think about this money, it's something that Bob Burnett said to me, which really resonated, was this is money for like 1,000 years. And we're in year 15. We're so early, but then people will look at the price and in Aussie dollar terms, it crossed over $100,000. And that's a meaningful amount. I mean, that's a tenth of the median house price in some of the capital cities. It's no longer like just a silly internet thing, but it still does strike me how incredibly early we are. Jeff, I have one last question. This is from the organizers of Bitcoin Alive. They were like, Jeff, we'd love to see you come over to Australia. I know that we are so far. That's one of the hardest things about Australia. We've got incredible people and weather, but my God, it's far from everywhere. We'd love to have you over here sometime. Is there any chance we can expect to see you sometime in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a really good friend of mine there right now traveling around. I've been a number of times, and Peter is a beauty. Lots of great Australian Bitcoiners, but I'd love to come over maybe next year. We'll see.
We'll see. Okay, yeah, no, exactly. No, it's been absolutely superb there, Jeff. My brain is a little bit rattled. I've certainly challenged some of my thinking in this discussion, and going forward, it seems as if I've got to do a bit more work, but I really do appreciate your time today. It's been really fun and challenging, which is, I guess, which is cool. We're not just sitting talking about Orange Coin going up or down or something like that. There's some real meat and potatoes here. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Awesome. Did you want to perhaps point the audience to where they can find you and some of your work there, Jeff?
I say this on each podcast for this reason. If you're going to follow me, make sure that you go to jeffbooth.ca first, because there's a lot of social media that I'm not on, but fakes of me are on. And they put out my content to try to DM you, to try to scam you. So if the social media handle like at Noster isn't on my website, it's not me.
Okay. So yeah, you're not promoting Doge then. Got it.
No.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been a pleasure. I hope we can connect in person one day.
Yeah, you too. See you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and that you got some value out of it. Either way, hit me up on Twitter and let me know what you think. My handle is Dale21M. If you've got any suggestions as to people you think I should be talking to or topics I should address too, I would love that sort of feedback. Otherwise, if you want to support the show, there's a couple different ways you can do that. The first is just to share it amongst your friends and family. The more that people hear the message that Bitcoin and crypto are not the same thing, the better. And I want to help people understand that. The second thing you can do is give me a 5-star review on whichever podcast app you're using. Of course, that's only if I deserve it. And last but not least, if you want to stream sats my way via the Fountain app, I'm not going to say no, but it's not expected. Thank you so much for your support thus far. It means the world to me. I appreciate the hell out of you, and the best is yet to come. Much love, friends. I'll see you on the other side.